A very good morning. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. The AX-4 mission with Polish astronaut Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski aboard will soon launch from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This comes after multiple delays caused by a persistent leak at the International Space Station, the destination of the journey. Our own Paweł Trzaskowski is at the Copernicus Science Center in Warsaw and is ready to tell us more about this mission and upcoming liftoff. Good morning, Paweł. So this is a very exciting time for all of us to observe. What can you tell us about the mood and what are we going to see in minutes to come?
Well, behind me you can see the entrance to the planetarium where scientists, experts and officials, including Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, have gathered to watch the launch of the AX-4 mission, a mission that is going to take a 4-person crew on board of the International Space Station for a 2-week-long mission. And as you rightly mentioned, Klaudia, it is a day of special significance in Poland as one of the astronauts is Polish, Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, and he is today going to become only the second Pole to reach the space after Mirosław Hermaszewski decades ago. He is going to be one of the scientists on the mission, and he's going to carry out experiments, a part of the Polish Ignis program, the first of its kind. The mission itself, as you said, was postponed 5 times because of various reasons: the weather, technical failures, the conditions on board of the ISS itself. But experts say in unison that there is little to worry about because this is literally rocket science, so everything has to be timely, organized and safe. But today, eventually, it is a day we are awaiting the launch with bated breath. Back to you.
Thank you so much. We're keeping our fingers crossed for their safety and looking forward to what's going to happen during liftoff. Paweł Trzaskowski reporting live from the Copernicus Science Center in Warsaw. Wednesday marks the second day and final day of the NATO Summit in The Hague. Key issues on the agenda include support for Ukraine in the war against Russia and boosting defense spending in the alliance. The Netherlands is hosting the summit for the first time ever with heads of state or government from all 32 NATO members in attendance, along with top officials from the European Union and Ukraine. This is the first annual top-level NATO meeting of U.S. President Donald Trump's second presidential term. Since taking office, Trump has urged European countries to step up military spending to 5% of GDP. Most countries are on board with such a steep hike in spending from the 2023 target set at 2% across the alliance, but some, such as Spain, have protested.
President? Mr. President, please. One picture.
If the rest of Europe had the same level of commitment to security, I don't think this would even be the topic for discussion, said Joshua Bergen, founder of the Alliance for Global Security, in an interview for TVP World. He was referring to the importance of increasing defense spending and the need for all NATO members to recognize the alliance's significance for future national security. Here's more.
Well, you and I are not behind closed doors. We can't see what's actually happening. Unfortunately, personalities do play here. A deal could well be in hand at the moment, that for reasons of personalities and the interpersonal conflicts that could take place once in the room, it might not happen. Nevertheless, I do think it's a step forward. Simply the notion of a 5% conversation 2 or 3 years ago is unthinkable, and now we're at a place where that's at least within striking distance. I don't think the question of 5% is a matter of if, but when. If it happens now, great. If it happens 6 months or a year from now, that's also a step forward compared to where we were just a couple years back. Eastern flank countries, Poland definitely knows this. If the rest of Europe had the same level of commitment to security, defense, the complete awareness of an adversary to the east, as Poland does, with its 4.7% spending, I don't think this would be even a topic for discussion. But the reality is others need to be effectively drug along, whether that's Spain, whether that's Hungary. Everybody has their differing interests. But at the end of the day, social spending will pale in the context of a hot conflict. And if these countries aren't prepared to contribute to the defense, their social spending may well be for naught in that context. The president is absolutely right to push for this. Good credit to all the other actors who are pushing that ball, the Secretary General, even the Chancellor of Germany, in a pretty profound departure from the previous couple of chancellors, supporting that roadway, supporting that path, probably for Germany's interests more so than the alliance or even the United States. But I believe it's ultimately going to lead to an outcome, whether now or in the future, that is better for the whole.
In The Hague, NATO and EU leaders spoke with Volodymyr Zelensky about Ukraine's possible accession to the European Union. The Hungarian Prime Minister, however, seems not exactly keen on Kyiv joining the EU.
I had a joint meeting with the presidents of the European Council and the European Commission and the NATO Secretary General, Antonio Costa, Ursula von der Leyen and Mark Rutte. We are working to ensure unity among our allies. We focused on cooperation within the new defense instrument SAFE and the negotiation process on our accession to the EU. It is important that the leaders of the member states reach a common decision to open the first negotiation cluster. It is unfair when a single party blocks the Union's decision. President, with all due respect, the European Union was founded to bring peace and prosperity to its member states. Accepting a country that is at war with Russia would immediately drag the EU into a direct conflict. It is unfair to expect any member state to take the risk.
Poland's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, said he hopes U.S. President Donald Trump draws the right conclusions from Vladimir Putin's strikes on Ukrainian civilians since Washington opened ceasefire talks, as well as Russia's stance on Israel-Iran conflict. The Polish official added that Moscow's stance in both of these matters show how little Putin values Trump's peacemaking efforts.
I hope President Trump draws the right conclusion from the fact that Putin has increased his attacks, particularly on civilians in Ukraine, since President Trump's peace efforts, and doubled again since the start of the latest hot period of the Middle East crisis. I hope it shows what an opportunist he is and how little he values President Trump's peace efforts. And I remind you that it's now already 100 days since Ukraine has agreed to an unconditional ceasefire. I hope Putin pays the price for supporting Iran in this current confrontation.
Italy pledged €1.5 million to support demining efforts in Ukraine in cooperation with the UN's development program and the Ukrainian authorities. The Italian ambassador to Kyiv, Carlo Formosa, said the project is a step towards returning land to farmers, playgrounds to children, and safe roads to Ukrainian families. The agreement was formalized during a high-level meeting in the Ukrainian capital between the Italian ambassador, the UN's Assistant Secretary General, the representative of the UNDP in Ukraine, and the Kyiv's Deputy Prime Minister. The €1.5 million will support the UNDP's Mine Action Program, which focuses on clearing landmines and other explosive devices left there by the Russian army. While the agreement marks progress in demining Ukraine, the country's officials stressed the need for continued international support and funding to accelerate clearance efforts. Lithuania signed a memorandum with American and Norwegian defense companies to secure production of ammunition amid Russia's war against Ukraine. The partnership will integrate the efforts of the Lithuanian Girate armament factory with American Northrop Grumman and Norwegian Nammo. As per the agreement, Northrop Grumman will supply ammunition produced in the Lithuanian factory to the international market. The deal memorandum will initiate negotiations to produce medium-caliber ammunition, ranging in size between 20 and 50 millimeters. Moreover, the Girate armament factory will be provided by the two companies with technology to produce 35mm ammunition. According to Lithuanian officials, the agreement will enhance national strategic autonomy in defense and ensure an uninterrupted supply of ammunition to Lithuania's armed forces. Kyiv and Copenhagen have signed a strategic agreement to launch Ukrainian weapons production in Denmark, boosting defense cooperation and investment. Denmark has allocated over $47 million to building the defense production plant. All drones manufactured there will be supplied to the armed forces of Ukraine, with production costs covered by international partners.
Today in The Hague, we signed a letter of intent with Danish Minister of Defense Troels Lund Poulsen, paving the way for the joint production of Ukrainian weapons on Danish territory. This document is the first step in implementing the Build with Ukraine initiative, which we began working on during the previous UDCG meeting. This is a strategic move that boosts our joint defense capabilities, strengthens supply chains, and creates new opportunities for technology exchange and integration of our defense sectors.
According to a CNN report, the U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy core components of the country's nuclear program. According to 7 officials briefed on a U.S. intelligence assessment of the attack, the program was likely only set back by months. The American broadcaster said the evaluation was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency of the U.S. Department of Defense and based on damage assessment conducted by the U.S. Central Command in the aftermath of strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. The analysis of the damage to the sites is still ongoing and could change as more intelligence becomes available. The findings are at odds with previous statements coming from the Trump administration, which said that the strikes destroyed Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. According to 2 people familiar with the analysis, Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed. Furthermore, one source said the centrifuges were left largely intact, while another said that Iran moved its enriched uranium prior to the strikes. CNN's report about U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities prompted a quick response from Donald Trump himself. While in The Hague, the U.S. president denounced the revelations that called the attacks, quote, the most successful military strikes in history.
Fake news CNN, together with the failing New York Times, have teamed up in an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed. Both the Times and CNN are getting slammed by the public.
Poland has signed a leasing contract for the procurement of Sidewinder missiles for its fleet of Korean F-50 fighter jets. The Sidewinder is one of the most successful short-range air-to-air missiles, which has been in production since the 1950s.
So far, Warsaw has only signed a contract to lease the missiles. However, according to Poland's Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, Warsaw is also engaged in talks with Seoul to outright purchase the munitions, as well as other types of ammunition for the F-50 fighter jets. The aircraft, purchased by Poland's previous government, couldn't be used to train pilots until recently, as they were lacking the necessary certification to take off.
As Poland debates the future of its armed forces, a similar conversation is gaining traction across the western border. With Germany struggling to achieve its military recruitment goals, the government is taking bold steps to reverse the trend. From potential mandatory service for men to talks of including women on the roster, Germany's conscription debate is heating up.
Will Germany reintroduce conscription? The country's defense minister Boris Pistorius said that if a voluntary model to meet recruitment goals fails, a stricter option would be considered.
They will move on to another model where they will, as they say, put in obligatory elements. What those exactly are not so clear, as the draft of the law is not finished. I would imagine that it's not going to be a full-fledged conscription that everybody will be called up automatically.
Based on a 2024 survey which indicates that only 23% of Germans would be willing to fight for their country, a tougher model is not inconceivable. Patrick Sensberg, president of Germany's Reservists Association, went a step further and reportedly proposed holding a referendum on whether women should also be subject to conscription. But that may not be so likely.
When it comes to the obligation for women, we know the model that we have upcoming will first only be for men. That seems to be the wide expectation. Germany doesn't really have many public referendums altogether, so I can't imagine that they would have a referendum just based on that one issue itself.
Some states, like Norway, already have compulsory military service for women. In 2015, Norway became the first European and NATO country to adopt universal conscription. Polish armed forces include over 21,000 women, accounting for almost 15% of the entire military. The service is not mandatory, but military training for women may have positive aspects.
It means that women will be empowered to be resilient, to take care, to know how to take care of their kids and themselves. Women are more than 50% of society. How you can imagine to build a comprehensive defense with leaving such a huge group in behind.
In Poland, women of certain professions relevant to the military may be summoned for mandatory qualification intended to assess their readiness for service. Despite the absence of compulsory military service in Poland, the Homeland Defense Act allows for reinstatement during times of crisis. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatobiszczyn.
And so this would be all the latest news for now, but please do stay tuned. We're back in just a moment with more news, interviews, and features for you to enjoy, and we'll see you there.